在节目中，我们一直研究多元又实用的沟通方式。那今天的单元也不例外，我们要从心理学家的角度，跟大家来分享如何跟无法沟通的人来沟通。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast.我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the difficult conversations, or more specifically, how to get out of conversations you don't want to have. In your workplace, where you may have to discuss with your colleagues or talk to them, but you don't necessarily need to report to them. There's always that person who you don't really want to have a conversation with, or a conversation can always seem a bit frustrating. You don't want to be rude, but you want to find a way to remove yourself from longer or more irritating conversations. So how do you do that politely and without causing issue in the workplace?
我相信应该每一个人都一定有这样子的经验，就是在工作当中，不管是同事或者是客户，在跟他做 email 沟通，或者是这种 face to face 或开会的时候，你会发现这个人好像永远都会有，就是我讲一句他大概有3句，或者他永远都有一个 excuse， 不管他这是做这件事情是不是对的，他永远都有一个 excuse， 或者所有的事情都不是他的错， or他永远都觉得事情很不公平， or 这个人他很喜欢找你来辩论，永远都会很想要让你来跟他来讨论一件事情，但是他都很想要赢的那种感觉。 So I don't know how many of you guys out there who experience this on a daily basis, but this is definitely a problem that we absolutely need to talk about, especially we dedicate our career talking about communication. Yeah.Communication 这个字好了，我们来 define 一下什么叫做 communication. Like, how do you actually define what communication is? Like, to me, communication, it's not just words. It's really about two people or, more than two people having an open-minded conversation.
Yeah, a lot of times it's about that back and forth. And I think in the scenarios described earlier, you don't always feel like it's a back and forth when you talk to certain people. So especially someone who always has to have the last word.
Yeah.
Or they always need to one-up you. So it's like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? I did this. And then they always did something better than that. Or whatever you've done, they've always done that before and better. Or they always want to have some kind of last comment.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're always being malicious or they're trying to hurt you, but it's not fun to engage in that because it doesn't feel two-way. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm sharing and you're sharing, or this is my thoughts and that's your thoughts. And it now feels like a competition when a lot of times the competition is unnecessary. That's where it feels like it's not communication anymore.
Yeah, 所以这种时候其实就不叫做沟通，因为沟通是要两方都要非常 open-minded 想要来分享他们的意见嘛。那当你跟这种不能沟通的人，你又必须要跟他共识，你必须要跟他 talk about project 或甚至一起开会，那这个时候到底要怎么办？因为我真的知道很多的人会为这件事情感到困扰，那很多的人也会一直很努力的找各式各样的方法，觉得我要来用这个方式来讲讲看是不是行不行，或者他一直会去来 self-reflect and looking for that different solution, but you always ended up feeling so tired and frustrated.So I just wanted to say, if you feel that way, it's okay. It's really okay, and you absolutely have the right to feel that way because I think a lot of us definitely experiencing that in the workplace.
And so doing some research on how do we improve these conversations, how do we have better conversations, actually, Sherry, you found a really interesting psychological framing of where this is coming from, but also a really good framework of how do you involve or actually remove yourself from these kind of conversations.
So of course, 当我开始做研究的时候，那当然自己也是经历到这些等于说是那种无法沟通的这种状况，我就开始去寻找一些 research， 一些 a lot of information online。那我就发现了有一个我很喜欢的一个心理学家，他的名字叫 Dr. Romney。那我会把他的 information 放在我们讲义当中。但是他的YouTube video， 它有非常非常多的 YouTube videos， 它主要在讲的是一种人格，那这种应该大家都听过，叫做自恋型人格 So the narcissistic personality disorder。 那我们今天先不深入去讲这样子的人格，但是我们来讲一下这种人格其实啊，他们就有很多跟我们刚刚之前讲这些无法沟通这种共同点哦。There's a lot of commonalities. Let me just put it like that. 那这个 Dr. Romney 他常常都会第一个要讲就是 OK， 当你必须要跟这样子的人共事，请你绝对要记住一个很重要的 framework， 也就是 D.E.E.P. So D is defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize。 那稍微讲一下，也就是说不要去过度的去为自己辩护，过度的去应付他，就是跟这个人沟通，不要过度的去解释，也不要把它变成是自己的错。This is very interesting to me because we talk about communication a lot and we always think about different ways to communicate in different situations. But when she talked about this, I'm like, don't even defend, don't even engage, don't even explain. That is something I've never thought about before.
Yeah, especially I think the first one. A lot of people, when you get frustrated or irritated, your first inclination is to start defending. Well, like, I didn't say that and do that. But one of the things we'll talk about later is what happens is a lot of times a person who, again, likes to have the last word or they likes to have an excuse is they're often very good at starting to get a conversation on a tangent. They're very good at taking the argument and moving it somewhere else in a way where you will always feel defensive. And then they can always walk away and be like, well, why are you so defensive? I'm just asking a question. And then, of course, that really angers someone.
Yes, I think that just brings back so much memory.
But I think a lot of what the don't defend is when you get into a defensive mode, you also lose sight of the conversation that you should be having or that you don't need to have a conversation.
真的
Right? And so in this case, when you don't defend, you find a way to either keep the conversation where the conversation should be or have the realization of like, I can walk away now and I should just do that. Yeah, and this is also getting into that don't engage, which means there are also people who are very good at baiting. Like anyone who likes gossip is usually very good at finding a way to get someone into that conversation, even if they don't want to be. So when it's not engaging, it's like, okay, how do I stop myself from having a conversation that I may not have the time or I don't really want to have?
一个很重要的是，因为我们在这种很 difficult 的这种对话当中，你一定会感到你的火球就要出来了 right? There's like a fireball in you. You're just like, you're on the reaction mode. 这个时候你就是想要 react. 那 react 的时候，你的这种情绪化就会来了。但是很重要的一点是，我们有的时候根本就不需要去跟这个人去解释太多，或者去为自己辩护，因为这个时候呢，他这个人他反而得到他想要的。Sometimes these people, they really enjoy that debate. They really enjoy seeing people getting so riled up and so angry and frustrated. They really love that. And you're just giving that to them. Yeah, but you're not giving anything to yourself. 所以我觉得前面这讲的 don't defend, don't engage, 其实它也算是一种自我保护。It's like a self-protection.Yeah. Especially when you know that you tend to be a little emotional, which is okay. Emotion comes first. If you're that person, 如果你是情绪先来的人的话，那这个真的是一个很好的一个方式。
Yeah. And again, we're not discouraging debate. It's always good to have debate. It's always good to have critical conversations. But we're looking at deciding, in a situation, especially in a workplace, if you're busy, do you always need to get into that conversation? Yeah. Do you feel that, again, this is not communication anymore. This is someone just trying to have a conversation, and it's not a back and forth. This is not what I'm saying and what you're saying, and we're listening and we're trying to even be critical of what other person is saying. This is just like someone is trying to engage you in something that you're not ready for or you're not interested in. So what can you do if you don't want to engage in this conversation or you, again, want to move on to the next thing?
那在我开始要讲到这些非常实用的一些片语跟句子之前，我要先讲一下我们刚刚讲那个 don't personalize. Again, 如果你是真的是 emotion 先开始的人呢，就像有点是比较 sensitive 比较敏感的人的话，有很多事情你跟这种人去来做沟通的时候，先不要把它当成这是在攻击我。Okay, don't personalize this, 因为我觉得这个是非常重要，也是一个自我保护的一个步骤。So Nick was talking about what can we say to these people when we're, let's say, in a meeting and we kind of have to be there, we have to talk to them, but we just don't really want to get into any conversation with them because you know that it's not going to turn out well. It's not going to be healthy for you. So I'm going to offer some of the non-committal phrases for you guys. 那如果你要等一下可能必须要跟这个人要开个会的时候，那你可以先跟这个人讲说，我等一下要开会，我大概3点的时候开会，大概所以我2点50分就必须要离开了。So you can say, I'm going to have a meeting at 3, so I need to wrap up our conversation at about 2:50. Give them a heads up that you have to be out of there at what time.
Yeah, and this is a good technique actually just in general, especially for people who you don't feel that they respect your time or they tend to be chronically late. So one thing that we've had to learn within Presentality a lot is we have a lot of our clients tend to be top CEOs or doctors, and they're very used to people operating on their time, and they had a tendency to show up to our meetings very late. Or if we committed a meeting from like 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, they would be on the phone or they would show up at like 3:45. And what we had to start doing in order to work with that behavior and just be like, I still have to leave at 4. So whatever that meeting was is you still have this time limit. And so now they have a choice. They can either start showing up on time or they better say what they have to say because I'm still leaving.
Right.
And so anytime that you're engaging with someone that either A, you don't feel like I want to be part of that conversation, or B, you don't feel they're respecting your time, is be polite about it, but just give them the time limit. Like, even if they're late, be like, I still need to leave by this time. So if we could wrap up by the conversation by this time, that would be great.
Absolutely. 那就算你等一下，可能你等一下并没有真的有一个 meeting， 我觉得你跟这样子的人去做这种沟通或开会的时候 it's still okay. Just tell them that you have to leave at certain time.And I really like a lot of phrases, when someone wanted to start a conversation, 你知道他开始好像这个 debate 又要来了，你就可以讲 oh, that's very interesting. Or I see. That's it.
Yeah, just very basic where, again, you don't feel like it's going to be a back and forth conversation. So you can put a very non-committal phrase like, I see, or, oh, I understand, because that's also not a back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
When we talk about when you ask questions, you should never ask yes or no questions. You always want to create an open-ended question. Well, saying something like, oh, I see. That's actually a very close-ended answer.
It is. It's actually kind of the opposite of what we've been telling people to do, because what we're trying to achieve here is not a conversation or that turns into a debate, right? We're trying to walk out of this conversation in one piece, basically.
Yeah. And so other ways that you can just kind of signal that I'm closing the conversation and be like, oh, I haven't thought about that before. Let me get back to you. Or I'll take it under consideration. Let's discuss this later.
And you can say, oh, yeah, you may be right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Just go like, thanks for sharing that, I think. That's a very non-committal phrase. And you can say, oh, I understand why you feel that way.
And so this is definitely one of those things where, again, you're not being provocative, where you're not engaging with them. You're not starting that argument or getting into that debate. You're just kind of signaling like, okay, I understand. And then again, you can just say something like, oh, I need to go handle other work, or I need to go do this thing.
Or, if it's 如果是一个长官的话，他开始想要训话还怎么样？I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind. 那这样就好了。So again, we're actually suggesting not to create that flow of the conversation, but you're just ending with something that it's not going to offend anyone and you can walk away safely in one piece and feeling peaceful.
Well, we hope that the next time you get into a conversation or you sense a conversation starting that you don't want to be a part of, you can hit them with a non-committal or a non-provocative phrase and then find a reason to walk away. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.